Now, the sad reality of it is a lot of people come to these seminars, and unfortunately, very few people actually do anything with it. In fact, the statistics say that 12% of people that actually come to seminars like this do anything with it. Meaning, most people take lots and lots of notes, but then their manuals end up sitting on the dash of their car, never to be seen again. Who knows what I'm talking about? Say yes. Yes. Come on and have a seat. Now, the same can be said when it comes to wealth and success. And the reason why is there are a number of wealth destroyers. What are the words, please? Wealth destroyers. These are the several wealth destroyers. The first one is entitlement. What is it? Entitlement. What is it? Entitlement. There are so many people that believe that the world owes them something. How many of you know people like that? Say yes. Yes. And these are the ones that no matter how many good-natured friends they have around them, no matter how many people around them try to help them to get out of that mentality, they remain in victim mode. They believe that everything is owed to them simply because some crazy tragedy happened, or maybe their nationality experienced some crazy crisis 300 years ago, and so the world owes them big time. Entitlement is one of the biggest killers of wealth and success. Does this make sense? Yes. Reach over, grab the arm of the person next to you. Give them a shake. And say, entitlement is extremely, extremely expensive. Entitlement is extremely, extremely expensive. The next few are actually phrases that people use. And it's interesting because I've overheard some of these phrases this weekend. But of course, not from anybody in this class, right?
They all left.
The next one, they all left. This one we've already discussed, but it bears repeating. And it is, I can't afford it. What is it?
I can't afford it.
Do me a favor. One more time, draw a big circle around that phrase and cross it out as many times as you possibly can. The phrase, I can't afford it, is one of the most expensive phrases in the English languages. Because what happens? You're automatically putting a glass ceiling over your earning potential. True or true? True. Again, just like we discussed the other day, anytime you say, think, or otherwise use the phrase, I can't afford it, you are literally saying there is absolutely no possibility of me creating the funds to invest in whatever it is I want to invest in. Does that make sense? Yes. What do we turn the phrase around to? How can I afford it? Tell the person next to you, it's better to say, how can I afford it? It's better to say, how can I afford it? Give him a high five and say, that's for me, that's for me. Excellent. Excellent. This next one is the phrase, I'm not ready. What's the phrase? I'm not ready. Twice as loud. I'm not ready. I can't tell you how many times people are like, well, Eric, I would really love to become wealthy, but I'm not ready. Well, how come you're ready to be poor? Or, Eric, I would really love to get thin, but I'm just not ready. Okay, you're ready to be fat? Or, Eric, I would really love to attract that relationship, but I'm not ready. So how come you're ready to be lonely? Does this make sense? Yes. It's fascinating because so many people put so many limitations on themselves just because they aren't simply willing to get outside their comfort zones. Does this make sense? Yes. Unfortunately, few people are willing to actually get ready, not realizing that, are we ever ready for growth and success? No. No. For example, how many parents do we have in the room? Yeah. How many of you waited to be parents until you were ready to be parents? Anybody? Is there such thing as being ready to be parents for most people? No. No! It's imaginary. What happens is you have kids, and you go through the process, and eventually you're ready to have kids by the time they go off to college. Yes? Yes. Is it possible it could be the same thing with wealth and success? Yes? Yes. you're never going to be ready because, as we discussed, the subconscious mind tries to take you out of the game. The subconscious mind tries to keep you from doing things that it deems are going to be painful or threatening. And anytime you decide to make changes like radical transformation, the subconscious mind goes, we're not ready. That can't be done. We can't do that. And so it takes the person out of the game. And so wrap your arm around the person next to you. Bring them in close. And say, you're never going to be ready. Do it anyways. Give him a high five and say, that's for me, that's for me. Number 4, kind of goes along with I'm not ready. The phrase, not right now. What's the phrase? Not right now. What's interesting is I hear a lot of people say things like, you know what? I know in my heart that such and such is right for me, but not right now. And I say, interesting. You feel peaceful in your heart, but you're going to deflect that and give yourself a chance to take a chicken exit. Of course these people are broke because they're deflecting these opportunities when they arise. True or true? True. My friends, there are such things as taking action on opportunities and then fitting them in. Doing what? Fitting them in. Twice as loud. Fitting them in. The phrase, not right now, again, is one of the biggest killers of wealth and success because there's a difference between knowing, you know what, this is not right for me. That's a totally different story. But when a person says, I know in my heart that this is right for me, but not right now, I look at them and I say, okay, I can't work with you. Does this make sense? And along those same lines, some people like to use certain phrases like, someday I'll, what is it? Someday I'll. It's a really interesting vacation spot that most broke people love to vacation to. They love spending their time on someday I'll. In fact, they met Gilligan there, and he's still there. Does this make sense? Yes. Well, someday I'll start that business. Well, someday I'll learn that technique. Well, someday I'll get that mentor. Someday I'll release that weight. Someday I'll do what it takes to become wealthy. The problem is, does someday ever come? No. These people that are constantly projecting things into the future never actually do it because, let's do an experiment. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. Everybody, I need everybody's participation on this. Yes. Raise your hand tomorrow. Oh, we didn't do it. Okay, let's try it again. Come on. You promise to play full on. Raise your hand tomorrow. What's the deal here? How come you're not doing it? Does tomorrow actually exist? No. What exists? Only today. If the future doesn't exist, what you're literally saying is my action does not exist. When you put things off to the future by saying someday I'm not ready, not right now, you are literally setting yourself up for failure. And here's the reason why. Can we all agree that there is an opposing force in the world that does not want people to be happy and successful? Yes? Yes. And there are several different names for that opposing force. We'll just call it opposing force. And here's the deal. The two biggest tools that opposing force utilizes are what are they, please? And the reason why is anytime somebody takes a long time to make a decision, that opposing force can then influence that decision. Does this make sense? Yes. This is one of the reasons why the following phrase is also one of the biggest killers of success. What's the phrase? How many of you have ever heard someone use a phrase like that? Yes. Or what's the slightly more spiritual version of that phrase? Eric, are you telling people not to pray about things? No, not at all. What I'm encouraging people to do is to actually tap into inspiration very, very quickly and then act on that inspiration. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Can we go spiritual for a second?
Yes.
I mean, like really spiritual? Can I like step in my spiritual soapbox for a moment?
Yes.
Okay, everyone lean in. Here's the dealio. A lot of people hide behind their religion and spirituality. A lot of people allow that opposing force to dictate their actions as they hide behind their religion by saying things like, I can't do anything until I pray about it. And they say, well, I need to be sitting inside the temple in order to make a decision. And I say, you don't read the scriptures, do you? And they go, sound effects? For some reason they turn into horses, I don't know. But they say, what do you mean? And I say, haven't you read that your body is a temple? If that's the case, can't you receive an answer absolutely anywhere? And I say, I love going to the temple. It's a great place to be. I go as often as I possibly can. But if you're the type of person that puts off making decisions until you're sitting in a particular edifice, that opposing force already has greater hold upon you than you realize. And again, the reason why is the longer it takes a person to make a decision or to take action, the more that opposing force can influence with fear, doubts, and the like. Does this make sense? In fact, I'm still on my spiritual high horse over here, by the way. This soapbox hasn't gone down. In fact, in the good book, it says, ask and ye shall receive. And it also says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. But it says, let him ask in
Faith.
Nothing
Wavering.
What does it mean, nothing wavering? Shout some things out.
No.
No doubt. What else?
Committed.
Committed?
Believing you'll receive an answer.
Yeah. I happen to believe, and I'm not going to go into a whole lot of religious stuff right now, but I happen to believe that a certain young man went into a certain grove of trees and had a certain amazing experience because he was willing to act. He had one of the greatest experiences ever recorded, and I can only imagine had he asked the question and received the answer and said, well, let me think about it. Are you kidding me? Well, let me pray about it. Well, good, I'm the one you prayed to. Does this make sense? How many of you are getting what I'm saying?
Yes.
Whenever you have a large decision to make, an opportunity to either jump into or say no thank you to, here's what I invite you to do. Tap into your intuition. Your what, please?
Intuition.
In fact, a lot of people say, well, how do I know if it's just my own thought, if it's just my excitement, my own hype, or if it's actual inspiration? And it comes down to one word. What's the word?
Peace.
What's the word?
Peace.
Twice as loud.
Peace.
Now that doesn't mean the opportunity won't seem scary. That doesn't mean the logical side of your brain isn't going to rebel, because it probably will. But if you recall, in that moment when I was still on welfare and I had that opportunity to sign up for that $5,000 program that I didn't have, Heather looked at me and said, how does it feel? The reason I knew that it was right for me was because I felt peace. Is it possible to feel peace when it seems like the entire rest of the world is scary and crumbling around you?
Yes.
Yes. And so, how do you know if something is actual inspiration and is right for you? You tap into
Intuition.
and if you feel
Peace.
what do you do?
Act.
Like act like next week?
No, act right now.
Oh, like what if you want to think about it? So then should you sleep on it? And like
You act now.
what's interesting? And I'm still on my high horse here, okay? And so tell the person next to you, he's still on his high horse. Everyone lean in. When you receive that inspiration, that peace, and you still say things like, I need to think it over, you are literally saying, my logic is greater than my higher power's logic. It is literally a mockery of your higher power. I know that's a really strong thing to say, but somebody's got to say it, and I'm on my high horse right now, so I can say it. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Write your question down, please. This is one of the reasons why so few, quote-unquote, well-meaning Christians actually reach financial success. There are so many misconceptions when it comes to wealth and success in the process of getting there. This is the reason why we created that audio training called Of One Mind, because we wanted to use spiritual documents in order to show, yes, you want to become wealthy so that you can serve as many people as possible. Does this make sense?
Yes.
And this is why I spend so much time and why I'm so passionate about educating people about these different things. How many of you are familiar with Napoleon Hill, author of Think and Grow Rich? It's one of the founding fathers of the personal development industry. In fact, almost every millionaire that I know of and have met has read Think and Grow Rich. And one of the things that Napoleon Hill says is that unsuccessful people tend to be very, very slow to make up their minds and very quick to change them. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Whereas successful people tend to be very quick to make up their minds and very slow to change them. They know what's right for them. As soon as they do, they make a decision. Now, if they don't feel peace, if they feel like it's not right for them, then of course they simply say no thank you. I tell people, I have no problem hearing no thank you if something isn't right for you. But if you feel in your heart that something is right for you, always act immediately, yes or yes.
Yes.
And then keep your commitments. Do what?
Keep your commitments.
Oh my word. One of the biggest killers of wealth What is it, please? One of the ways that I can tell if someone is very, very successful is when they give their word, they keep it. Down to the minute, whenever possible. I can always tell when someone is extremely successful because we'll make an appointment and they'll say, I will call you at such and such a time, and I can turn on my alarm, and right as my alarm goes off, on the dot, they're calling me. Now, every so often, sometimes it takes them 30 seconds to dial my number and 1 minute goes by. I say that's forgivable. However, if you are the type of person that chronically, what's the word?
Chronically.
Thank you, that chronically gives your word and you do not keep it, you are lacking the integrity to create massive success in your life. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Wealth follows integrity. Oh, but Eric, I know of a lot of really bad people that do lots of bad things with money. Yeah, how long do they get to keep their money? Does this make sense? I want to be a really good person that gets to keep money and then do some really amazing things with it. How about you?
Yes.
If you give your word, you must keep it. Why? Because you said you would. Yes or yes?
Yes.
Reach over, grab the person next to you. Give them a shake.
Yes.
And say, when you give your word,
You
gotta keep it.
gotta keep it.
When I give my word,
When
I keep it.
I keep it.
From this day forward,
From this day forward,
I keep my word
I keep my word
with exactness.
with exactness.
Give a neighbor a high five and say, that's for me, that's for me. And again, the reason why is, one more time, we attract people into our life that are like, who?
Like us.
And if you want to be successful, it's important that other people keep their commitments to you. Yes?
Yes.
What right do we have to ask other people to keep commitments if we don't keep commitments ourselves? Does this make sense?
Yes.
Oh, so Eric, like what happens if I've made a commitment to someone and then like some sort of inconvenience comes up? You keep your commitment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
The only exception is if in advance you contact the person and you work out a win-win compromise. The other person must agree to the new commitment though. For example, let's say I book a phone call with someone at 4 p.m. let's say my 3:45 phone call is going longer than I expected, and so I, on my laptop, message my 4 p.m. phone call saying, I am so very sorry, my 3:45 phone call is going a little bit long. Is it okay if I call you at 4:05 p.m.? If the other person says, no, it's got to be 4 p.m., I tell my 3:45, sorry, I've got to go, I've got a 4 o'clock, all the best. And I call the other person at 4 o'clock. Does this make sense?
Yes.
It's only if the other person agrees to the new commitment, therefore making it a win-win situation. What situation?
Win-win.
That then we adjust the commitment, especially if you put things in writing. It's fascinating because I know of a lot of people that will actually sign contracts and blatantly break them. It's fascinating. I know a lot of people that have signed up for high-end mentoring programs, not just with us, but with all these other different companies. And then they try to back out of their commitment. And rather than putting energy into keeping their commitment, they put all this energy into breaking their commitment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Well, I signed up to pay this mentor all this money, and then I decided I didn't want to pay all that money because I realized I didn't think that was worth it. And so I went to court and I tried to put all this energy into not making this payment. Well, how come you didn't just put all that energy into creating that much money and more and making it no problem? Does that make sense? I know I'm still kind of on my high horse right now. Is this helpful for anyone?
Yes.
Wrap your arm around the person next to you. Pat him on the back. Say, Eric still loves you.
Eric still loves you.
And so do I.
And so do I.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting next to you. And I'm still sitting next to you. And Eric hasn't thrown anything at you yet. Because you are loved. And take your hand just like this. And say, I'm still loved. I may have made mistakes in the past. But I commit to changing. And getting better. Hands just like this. Pat the head of the person next to you. And say, you know that you're still loved. You're committed to change. You can get better. From this day forward. You are better. Otherwise, I'm going to mess up your hair forever. Give it a high five. Say, that sounds good to me. And the most blatant wealth creator, which I'm not even going to write on here, but you can write down if you want to, is simply not believing that you're good enough. The sad reality is very few people actually reach a stage in life where they are enough. Where everything, quote unquote, comes together, and finally they believe they're enough. What most people don't realize is that it's after they realize they're enough that things come together. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's been a very interesting year for me. As I mentioned earlier, I've been on a process of slimming down. And as I mentioned earlier today, a lot of the weight has been very, very emotional. A lot of the weight has been mental, and just realizing that I had put on a lot of extra body fat because I wanted to hide. A number of years ago, I was mentoring with somebody that I absolutely idolized. I met this person at a seminar much like this. I paid him tens of thousands of dollars to mentor me, and I could not believe that I finally had this person one-on-one. And my results absolutely skyrocketed. I mean, I was this person's star student. He would actually have me on his stage with a cheap mic. And it was like really, really cool because he doesn't give anybody else a cheap mic, but he gave me a cheap mic. And I thought, I'm finally enough. Well, unfortunately, a number of people started coming to some of my events, and they began twisting some of the words that I had said and some of the things that I had done. And unfortunately, I was still a rookie in business, and so at that time, we didn't document everything, we didn't record everything that we did, we didn't have people sign waivers or anything like that. And so they started making claims about things that I had said. And because I didn't have the recordings of when I did not say that, they began to spread this to a bunch of people, including to this particular mentor, and began dragging his name through the mud as well. And the day came when he sent me a text message and said, Eric, can you meet me in my office at such and such a time? And I said, well, sure. And I walked into his office and he said, here's the deal. People are dragging your name through the mud, and now they're dragging my name through the mud because I'm associated with you. And so I'm sorry, but you're no longer welcome here. And he told me that he was never going to be my mentor again. And it took me a couple of years to finally realize what had been going on. Because I had put him up on such a high pedestal, subconsciously, I viewed this man as deity. And by him telling me that I was no longer welcome there or within his company, it literally represented my higher power telling me that I was not good enough to return home. And that was the only time that I literally came home, got down on my knees, and literally asked my higher power to please take my life. Because if I was not good enough to even be in his presence, what worth was there in me even remaining on this earth? And a large part of this journey that I've been on just this year has been realizing that a whole bunch of the body fat that I had been using, that I had been storing in my midsection, was covering up the soul wounds that I had been storing inside my midsection. Here in the abdomen, we actually store at least 4 different negative emotions, including hurt, sadness, resentment, and abandonment. I was adopted as an infant. And so I never met my biological mother until I was 29 years old. And until I was 29 years old, I had the belief that I was whisked away from my birth mother because I wasn't wanted. Fast forward a couple of decades, and this person that I idolized told me that I was no longer wanted, compounded everything. And so I put on almost 100 pounds of body fat to cover up or numb the soul wounds that I had had. And a part of me was so scared that once I finally released it, once there was nothing covering me up anymore, that everything that they had said about me was correct. And that I would be exposed, and that I would realize that I was the fraud that everyone said that I was. And so, for the longest time, I carried around all that extra baggage. And people kept coming up to me saying, Eric, I really love what you teach. You're teaching such really good principles. But I just don't feel like I can connect with you. And it wasn't until earlier this year that I realized, oh, of course not. I had literally created a wall of protection around me to keep myself from actually connecting at a deep heart-to-heart level with people, in order to quote-unquote protect myself, simply because I had the belief that I wasn't good enough.